The narrative continues to describe her bringing the child to her people, and they accuse her of unchastity. She demonstrates the supernatural nature of the happening by pointing to the infant Jesus, who miraculously speaks from his cradle. And he says, "Inni Abdullah, I am God's servant. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. He has made me blessed wherever I may be." Now he says this specifically to refute the Pauline take on Christology, which the Qur'an is concerned to counteract. He says, "Inni Abdullah, I am God's servant," not "I am God, I am the Son of God." I am God's servant. And in Islam's view, that's the highest and most exalted rank to which anybody can aspire, to be a true servant of God. He has given me the book, i.e. Jesus has been given a book. The Qur'an affirms that the Injil, which is an Arabization of the word evangelos, the good news, is one of the four written scriptures that we explicitly know have been given to human beings. Whereas in the Christian perspective, of course, Jesus isn't given a book. The book is written about him by the four evangelists. وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا, and he made me a prophet. Now, Jesus is a prophet according to a certain Christian perspective, but of course he's more than that. So the first three things he says from the cradle are constructed so as to refute the mainstream Christian view of who Jesus of Nazareth was. And then it goes on. This, by the way, is Quran Surah 19, verses 28 to 34. Now, this account, particularly where it touches on the nativity, is pretty unfamiliar. It's foreign to the four Gospels, foreign to the extra-canonical Gospels. In fact, although there's a lot of legendary material that appeared in the first few centuries after Jesus' birth, we can't find any parallels whatsoever in any of that literature. This is something new. Joseph is written out of the story. So are Bethlehem and the manger. The image instead is the rather austere one of a solitary woman giving birth underneath a palm tree somewhere in the wilderness to the east of Jerusalem, and then returning to face the scandal. The only recognizable feature really is the idea of the virginal conception. So the Quran gives us this fairly full, although fairly unfamiliar, account of Jesus' origin in the world, constructed always for polemical purposes to emphasize his humanity. The doctrine of immaculate conception, which is retained, does not logically conflict with the idea that he was a human being. However, the later career of Jesus is portrayed very thinly indeed. The Quran's really not very interested in it. We are told in Surah 3, verses 45 to 53, that Jesus had Hawariyun, disciples. We learn in Surah 5, verse 110, that he was sent to the children of Israel, confirming the Torah with some amendments. Another important point, in the Muslim view, Jesus lived his life as a believing Jew. He works miracles, he brings the dead to life, that's in the Quran. He heals the blind and the lame, and he brings a clay bird to life. He holds a bird of clay in his hand, breathes on it, and brings it to life. That's not in the four Gospels, but interestingly, it does appear in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, which was one of the Gospels found at Nag Hammadi in Egypt about 50 years ago. So there is a precedent for that one. But most startlingly of all, and again all in the context of its critique of Pauline Christianity, the Quran appears to deny the crucifixion. Surah 4, verse 157 to 8 reads, "They, the Jews, did not kill him. They did not crucify him, but it was made to seem so to them. Those who differ about him are in doubt concerning him. They have no knowledge about him, but follow mere opinion. Certainly they did not kill him, but God raised him to himself." Now this is frankly an obscure passage, and it's given rise to many divergent commentaries. The phrase, وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ, but it was made to seem so to them. Just 2 or 3 words in Arabic, is sometimes taken to mean that a likeness of Jesus was crucified in his stead. Some medieval exegetes, for instance, largely on the basis of speculation, say that God, in order to save his prophet, transfigured the face of Judas, who had betrayed him, to make him look like Jesus, and he was taken by the Roman soldiers and crucified in Jesus' stead. And there are a number of other theories that the Muslim commentators have advanced an explanation of this verse. But what is clear is that the Qur'an denies the crucifixion, particularly in the fashion that the evangelists record it. Now, it doesn't need to do so on its own theology. Jesus could have died on the cross, could even have been resurrected, but this would not necessarily have entailed any faith in Jesus as God, as a divine being, or in an atoning sacrifice for original sin. That narrative could have been preserved, could have been there in the Quranic narrative without interrogating the Qur'an's fundamental theological assumptions. It would just be another case of the temporary triumph of human evil with no larger theological implications. Yeah.
Is there any account in the Qur'an of Judas hanging himself?
No,
No.
I've not encountered that. Have you seen that somewhere? Why
He hung himself.
I think, there's... It's in the Bible, is it?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
is it?
Right.
And one other thing that I find interesting is the denial of the crucifixion as you framed it sounds very much like what Christians call the heresy of Docetism, that Jesus only appeared to have had a human form. But they were coming at it from, if he were truly God, he could not have taken on the flesh in full as a human being.
Right. They were doing it from the other extreme, because it was God that had been crucified. Yeah. Okay, so I was asking the question, why is it that the Qur'an denies the crucifixion, if to include that narrative would not have questioned its basic assumptions? Well, it is probably the case that the Qur'an does this as a rhetorical device to deny the doctrine traditionally held by Pauline Christianity. That doctrine, namely the divinity of Jesus, is denounced by the Qur'an in Surah 4, verse 171. O people of the book, this means Jews and Christians, be not extreme in your religion, and speak of God only the truth. The Messiah, son of Mary, is only the messenger of God, and his word which he placed in Mary, and a spirit from him. So believe in God and his messengers, and do not say three. Cease, it is better for you. God is only one God. Far exalted is he above having a son. And on the basis of this verse, majoritarian Islam has traditionally attached the rather opprobrious label of shirk, of compromising the principle of the divine unity to Christianity. It's a grave accusation, since precisely the same term is used in the Qur'an's polemic against the idolaters of Quraysh in Mecca. The Quranic Jesus, of course, himself denies this. As I mentioned, he says, Inni Abdullah, I am the servant of God. So to sum up then, the Qur'an affirms Jesus, but as prophet and as Messiah, rather than as God. Key aspects of his gospel ministry, like his preaching of the imminence of the Basileos to Theon, the imperial rule of God or the kingdom of God, are absent entirely. The picture is fleshed out somewhat by hadith narratives and a lot of ascetic stories which filtered into the early Muslim community following contact with Christian anchorites or the conversion of Christians to Islam. But Islam's Jesus is always Jesus the man, the wandering ascetic prophet of Galilee who affirms the law and is sent only to Israel, sent only to the lost sheep of the children of Israel, and does not believe himself to have a universal mission. So the Johannine and the Pauline Jesus has vanished without trace. Anyway, that's the Quranic understanding of the prophet Jesus. What I want to do now is sketch something of the subsequent history of Muslim-Christian interaction.